Welcome back to the Daughters of the Moon podcast. We're grateful that you can join us for another week.
We certainly are.
And today we have Dr. Karolina LaBrecque on. She is an author, professional keynote speaker, distinguished somatic high performance coach, holistic behavioral consult, and dedicated life coach. She's transformed lives from the brink of burnout to a state of harmonious balance without sacrificing productivity. She's got an impressive educational background, holds a Master of Science in Psychology, a PhD in rehabilitation with a focus on neurodiversity, along with certifications in massage therapy and hippotherapy from Poland. So welcome. We're really excited that you can join us today on our podcast, and we're going to get to know you. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. And yes, I hope it's going to be a lot of fun.
It's going to be fun. It just has to be.
Absolutely. So we did a little bit of your bio that you sent. And so can you tell us about yourself and how you got on this journey? And I'm really, really curious about this hippotherapy. I'm not going to lie.
Yes, it's therapy by hippopotamus now. So hippotherapy is equine therapy. It's using OTPT speech. In the United States, it's OTPT speech. In Europe, it's a little different. In the States, you have to be licensed either in OTPT or speech to perform it. And it's a therapy with the use of a horse.
Oh, okay.
My whole PhD was actually on that in autism, because someone told me one day that I will never do anything with horses, and there is no way I'm going to write a PhD on it. So I did.
That was a challenge for you.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Actually, it was fun. Yeah. Now it's more popular, but when I did it, it was 18. I defended it probably 17 years ago.
Well,
it was still a pretty, as far as research goes, not as using it, but as far as research goes, it was still a very pretty, especially in autism, there was almost nothing.
Oh, wow.
So it was one of the first kind of, now there's much more, but yeah, which is good.
Yeah, that is very good. That is very good.
So you took that challenge and you just went with it.
Yeah, so you ask me how do I get where I am. So I'm Polish. So a Polish woman, you don't tell us that we cannot do something. That's one of the fastest way to get us to do something. Actually, little secret. Tell me that I cannot do, and we will find a way to do it. So when I defended my master dissertation, the guy who was evaluating my master dissertation said, I would like you to do a PhD with me. And he said autism, and I said horses. And that's how we arrived at my dissertation.
Beautiful.
But it was good. It was good, and it was fun. So how did I arrive where I am today as a coach? And how did that went from hippotherapy and horses and psychology? Even as a kid, I knew I'm a healer. I was that kid that always rescued the kiddie and brought the dog home or to my aunt, or, all that stuff. And science was always my passion. So at some point I was pre-med, pre-vet, and I volunteered in hospitals and vet clinics and did all of that. But I kind of realized I don't like clients dying on me.
I don't like that either.
The part that, patients were dying, or you had to put an animal down, that kind of made me realize in my very early 20s that is not something that I want to experience on, maybe not daily, but weekly, weekly versions. So I sticked with, so I finished high school in States, and then I went in first year of college, and I went back to Europe. And in Europe, it's a little different. So in Europe, for example, medical school is right after high school. So you go straight to veterinary or medical school right after your high school. But I went into interdisciplinary school with a psychology major, thinking that maybe I will switch later. And I sank. So 5 years of that, because there is no such a thing as bachelor. I think still there isn't. But so it's a 5 years of psych classes only. And in the process of that, and because I was always connected to that physiology and to that, I kind of realized that that's very one-sided. So I did my massage license, I did my hippotherapy in the midst of that, which is all body related. And I said, well, then I may do my PhD in physical therapy. And I did my PhD in physical therapy. It's research-based. So I'm not a practicing physical therapist, but with the knowledge of a practicing physical therapist. And so that's how that happened. And I sank very deep into autism and neurodiversity. And after my PhD, I moved back to States just for a moment to take like a gap year from after my studies. I had a job in England that I was supposed to take up in a barn doing the hippotherapy. And in the midst of that, probably like 4 months into that, I met my now current husband. So that England never happened. We got married a year later. My parents do live in States, so that was in Massachusetts. So it wasn't a problem. And yeah, and I've been with this guy 16 years, 15 married, and that's how I ended up in New Hampshire. And I was still working with horses and still working with neurodiversities and disabilities, or I hate the word disabilities. Different abilities is what I would much prefer to say. And then I was in my car wreck, and that almost put me on permanent disability. Actually, I should be, according to my neurologist, on a permanent disability. He very strongly recommended that I go that way. I very politely, again, kind of like with you're never going to write a PhD in horses, very politely told the guy that I disagree with his prognosis. That was my very professional answer. In my head, in Polish language, I said something very different. That is not to be repeated on air, what I think about his opinion and his medical qualifications for that opinion. But I kept it to myself, and I kept searching and finding solutions outside of the box. My education helped me with that. And here we are, 8 years later, I'm almost fully functioning, definitively not on disability, and probably 90% back to where I started. So with post-concussion and neuro issues and neck and back issues. So never take the no for an answer.
Good girl. Good girl.
Rehab takes time. But yeah, so in midst of that, I've learned when you work with severe disabilities, and I worked with adult populations, there is always a chance of getting hit on the head. And because of the level of my concussion and damage that I had, it's very recommended that I don't get hit on the head ever again. So I end up switching. Even before that, I was doing wellness coaching, and I had on my own gym, very small program in a fencing club. So I kind of took that and moved more and more into that area of life coaching and wellness coaching. And that's what I'm doing to this day. I'm a biohacker and a wellness coach. Holistic coach is what I like to call it, mind, body, and spirit. I have my own method. It's called Befriending Your Life, by befriending your quest, befriending your surrounding, your boundaries, your body, and your mind. And that's basically the very short version of the story. How did I end up doing what I'm doing? Wow. Currently very invested in PTSD and trauma work and somatic work.
Yeah, I think that's really important too, because that seems to be creeping up more and more and more is the PTSD. And I think people are,
Well, yes, it does, mostly because 2020. We can laugh at it now, kind of, sort of, but in reality, that was a global trauma. That was traumatic, and a lot of people who already had, everyone has some level of trauma. It's the matter of how you respond to that trauma. Some people are more susceptible to PTSD, which is the post-traumatic stress disorder. Some are susceptible to complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which is even higher level of hell. And I think that global trauma really kind of was that cherry for a lot of people that added, on that cake. So right. It flashed out a lot.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think, like you said, if you had any kind of trauma, especially if it was more advanced, and I think that just, I think it was bad in that way, but it was good. And I think that it taught us some things about ourselves and how we can actually cope through some of these things. But did you find that there was ways that you were helping people cope through that?
So it was interesting because my business at that time, and we're talking 4 years ago. I cannot believe I'm saying this 4 years ago, right? So I literally just found my physical therapist that brought my brain back. So I still was kind of, my business, I took 3 years off. I kind of was working. I thought I can be working, but in reality, I barely was. So it just took off again. And the first 3 months it tanked because obviously everyone froze, and it was that deer in a headlight kind of no one is doing anything and just sitting and watching. But then around July, people had enough. And it really, and I got flooded. I got flooded with clients with, and I do life coaching. I don't do psychotherapy. But I do moving forward, right? So how do we don't go dig deep. If someone is in an active trauma, I always refer out, but to EMDR or other methodologies. But how do you design your life, knowing what you know about your nervous system and about your environment? How do you design your life to function on the highest level, right? So functioning on that highest level, and a lot of people were not functioning on the highest level. Some couldn't even function on a, low level. And interestingly, because I couldn't drive, or I shouldn't drive much, I designed my business on Zoom before COVID. I was already remote. So while clinicians were still, fumbling and figuring out how can we even see clients,
Right.
right? Because HIPAA compliance, and there wasn't even, regulations. You weren't, as a clinician, because I have a lot of friends who are clinicians, you weren't allowed to do telehealth if you take insurance. It wasn't even, it took them about probably 4 or 5 months to come out of, okay, we need to do something about this.
Right.
So that was, I think coaches, for a lot of people end up, because we were already online, end up being much more ahead of that curve of technology and usage. I was doing business meetings on Zoom probably in 2018. And I kind of laughed. I mean, COVID is nothing to laugh about, but after COVID, I didn't have to explain to people what Zoom is. Because
Right.
normally I was like 5 emails, people have to download the software, and all of a sudden after now I don't have to say, Zoom. Everyone knows what Zoom is, and most of us are zoomed out.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that it was good in that way, right? Because we did learn that we could reach out to people and be like this on this interview where you're in New Hampshire and we're in Canada, and you can do these things, right? To just further teach people things and help people, and I think that's amazing. So
Yes, and it's almost told us that crossing the boundaries is easy in a sense of geographical boundaries, right? And we again, kind of a funny situation. I joined BNI just before that. It's a networking group, and it was a new chapter. We just formed it that December, and we finally got enough people to launch. And our big launch is supposed to be like the end of January, but I'm in New Hampshire, so you know where I'm going with it. Obviously it was in person, and everyone was like, "No, don't do it in January because snow, and we're gonna, knowing our luck, this is gonna be a snow day and all of that." So we planned it for March, and literally that was the first week that the government shut everything down.
Wow.
So the snow didn't get us, but the COVID did.
Right.
Totally shut us down, and we were the first chapter in the world to do it on Zoom.
Nice.
Do a first BNI meeting. They just literally launched the platform. We were meeting on Wednesdays. They launched it on Monday, and we're the first meeting
Wow.
to do it on Zoom. So the launch that's supposed to be, so it just shows that we are resilient and flexible. And someone ended up with an order of a lot of donuts.
Yeah.
To eat, but yeah. So it's but yes, going back to trauma and the burnout. So I think there are two things to it, because there is the trauma, and then there is the economical situation and the burnout of now multiple people having to have multiple jobs to maintain the budgets. And it's interestingly global. It's, you know, you look at the local politics and everyone is switching. I'm blessed with the fact that I follow at least 3 or 4 countries' news, both
Okay.
Europe and States. And it's, you know, inflation hit everyone across the globe. And it wasn't just COVID or with what's going on in Ukraine and in the Middle East and all of that. So, but, you know, whatever the reason, for an average person and average business owners, because I predominantly work with business owners, it's another layer. I don't know how it is in Canada, but in the United States right now, it's very difficult to get employees.
Yeah.
Or to get them and show up and stay. So a lot of businesses, I know at least 2 restaurants that shut down, not because they didn't have clients, they didn't have staff.
Yeah. And
They
that's
had,
here too. That's here too. They're so fussy about what they want to work at these days, and they want more money than you know, than maybe they're qualified to get, you know. Yeah, it's awful. It's here too.
yeah. So it's not so much in Europe yet, but I think it's also the generational, you know, and I mean, we can have a whole debate on why that is, but it's a
Research are good.
you know, is it generational? Is it politics? It's a combo of everything. Is it what the governments did and people got used to not having, you know, if you're getting subsidized at the level, you know, it's an interesting thing. So a lot of my clients are stressed out and are burned out.
Yeah.
Prices went up, so a lot of my clients who are, like, for example, I'm working with 2 or 3 insurance agents right now, and for them to make what they need to make to sustain their families, they're working 12-hour days, day in, day out, and that is not physiologically sustainable.
No,
No, it's not. So do you have any tips that you can share with people of some ways that you can kind of deal with this burnout and those kind of things to push yourself a little bit forward or to come out of that, like saying no, maybe not, you know, I know it's a tough time. So it's really hard to not go get that second job if you need it to support your family. But I'm just wondering.
So it all boils down, and the first thing that I do with all my clients is the work on vision. So I have a very specific way I set goals, and it's depending who you ask, but that's how I do it. I don't start with goals. We start with your mission, vision, why you want on Earth, and core values, and your principles. And from principles, we develop your values, which are your long-term goals. And then from that, we set goals, and from that, we set action steps. Most people set goals, New Year's resolution, people don't do them well because you pull a goal out of the head that's not attached to anything.
right.
You know, it's not built into your whole existence. And life will, it's not the question if it will throw it. It's only a matter of when it's going to throw you a curveball. So yeah, I always tell my clients that your motivation has to be higher than your excuses, right? Your why behind whatever you want has to be higher than your excuses. And so that's the first thing. New, who the hell are you? And where are you going with this?
Yeah.
If you have that down, saying no, it's pretty easy. Maybe not me, you know. Is it on my vision board? No, then thank you. It literally boils down to, is this on my vision board? Or maybe not yet. Maybe it's a 5-year, you know, put it on a shelf. But when you have that clarity, it becomes easier. But to your point, yes, it's easy to say unless you have to work because your mortgage and you don't want to be homeless. You know, so that's the theory, and the reality is that very often we have to do what we have to do to survive. And I'm a huge fan of mini breaks. So maybe you can't take a day off, and maybe you have to have two jobs, but make sure that even in that setting, you do something to fill up your bucket, something to fill up your cup, and both mentally and physiologically. And it doesn't have to be expensive. It may be as much as sitting with a cup of coffee on the sun.
Yeah.
Or getting up a few minutes earlier and getting that 5 a.m. vitamin D, you know, morning exposure. It may be as simple as taking your dog for a walk. It may be as simple as, spending 5 minutes on Epsom salts and putting them in a bucket and putting your feet in it and detoxifying a little bit. So again, it doesn't have to be a spa day. Also, if you can afford that, and also if you can find time for that, it's even better if you can go on a vacation. But realistically, you can find cheap and simple ways that bring you joy and that you can refill that bucket again. And then realize that one of my physical therapists that I work I'm the patient, she has this plug in her office that I love, which says, listen to your body whispers so it doesn't have to scream. And I'm a recovering addict from that because I grew up, I was in a sports school in Poland. So it's kind of like in Poland, you don't have teams on schools. You either are good at sports and you get accepted to a sports school and then you have a ton of sport, whatever profile you are in, or you don't. And you have one PE. There is no team. There is no, it's a totally different culture.
Right.
So I was in a sports school, and this was like many years ago, when the culture was very different, and basically it was what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So you got your coach
That's
that your
true.
knee hurts, and I actually ran for 5 years with a torn tendon, and no one cared much about it, because if I'm still moving, that means it's not bad enough, right?
That's right.
So I became very good at ignoring my body. Which probably paid forward after this car wreck, because I'm so good at ignoring my body that I can work through excruciating pain and, whatever. Is it healthy and is it recommended? Oh, hell no. So as I say, I'm a recovery, don't push through it, and listen to your body and listen to those whispers, especially with adrenal glands and especially with women, and especially middle-aged women. Because unfortunately, and I don't know if it's the same in Canada, but United States, very often you go to the doctor and they tell you that being in pain is normal, that it's a part of aging process. And this is for sure premenopause, and this is for sure, your hormones or whatever, right? When in reality, you are in huge adrenal fatigue, food sensitivities, and other stuff that give you very similar effects. So unfortunately, at least in the United States, you have to advocate for yourself a ton.
Yeah. We're the
And
same here. You absolutely have to advocate for your health here because, they're not all, but they're the good portion of the medical, it is. They're swamped as well. That's part of it, but part of it is, they don't have the time, and it's easier just to say, get on your way and go, right?
or lose your weight.
Yep.
I have a lot of clients with weight. Well, wait a minute, but why aren't they losing weight?
That's right.
Because
And they'll do tests.
Why are they craving the given foods and not the others? And we can have a whole discussion about the gut flora, and that the little biome in your body actually makes you crave what you want to crave. I had this discussion. I network a lot, and in one meeting, I was meeting with this lovely local lady who is a lawyer and a coach as well. And I told her one day, literally, that the next male physician that tells me that it's in my head, she's gonna be bailing me out of jail. I'm like, and that was actually right after I ended up in ICU with an anaphylactic reaction to bees, and spent 3 days on a ventilator, and then I ended up in an allergy office, obviously. And the doctor was trying to convince me that I wasn't anaphylactic, and that for that low of antibodies, there's no way I'm anaphylactic. So to prove me wrong, he actually pulled my medical records and he proved himself wrong. I did have the anaphylaxis protein, but it's constant. It's constant. And interestingly, in that moment, I remember I was on ambulance, in an ambulance, because there was my first attack, and 5 years ago, so I didn't know. I had hives before, but I never had, never had the throat and mouth closed up on me. And I went to urgent care when they promptly have the heart attacks, seeing what shape I am. So they put me on IVs and what's not. Call ambulance, and on the way to hospital, when I was already after 4 EpiPens and I was on EpiDrip,
Whoa.
I talked to the paramedic and I said, hey, listen, I always underreport, I never overreport. I get to the ER and the first words out of the doctor's mouth is like, oh, it's your accent. When my tongue was swollen and I was, thinking about like that, but it was my accent. So the lady literally looked at him and was like, no, I had a normal conversation with her 5 minutes ago. So that's when he was like, oh, intubate, but yes, even when your mouth is swollen and your tongue is, like, yeah, no, it's your accent. And it's definitely in my head. So it's an interesting, it's a very interesting, and obviously that's, not all doctors. There are some very wonderful MDs, and but you have to advocate for yourself and have to be very adamant about you are your own responsibility.
Yeah.
Yes, you
Using
are.
the system as there to support you, but you have to be you have to educate yourself on your body. Not everybody reacts the same. I'm a zebra.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I'm literally a zebra. I always go to a doctor office and I say, I'm a zebra. I'm that 0.1% that reacts differently, and they all laugh and then have a panic attack when they give me something, and my body totally freaks out.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, remember that conversation first day we had? I'm a zebra. Yes. I don't want to be a zebra, but I'm a zebra. So, and everyone to some extent is a zebra.
Yeah.
They all have
Just
a stripe.
because,
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
maybe not to my extent that you'll end up in ICU because someone gave you an antibiotic. That was last year. But you have to know both your body and your mind, and you also have to understand the connection between your body and your mind. And the fact that very often stress and burnout both burnout and PTSD are just an extreme version of stress, right? They manifest a little different. Also, you can get PTSD from burnout,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you are bullied at work and stuff like that. They manifest, they both stress reactions. It's an extreme stress. And you have to realize that what's in your head is what was a stress reaction. I will give you an example. It's all in your head. And I just said that I will, should strangle another doctor that tells me it's in my head. But in reality, it is in your head in an extent that your brain doesn't recognize what's real and what's not.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't believe me, think about this. You're sitting on your couch watching a horror movie. Why are you jumping out of your skin? Why is your heart rate up? Why are you sweating? And why are you, listening? All of a sudden you are vigilant, checking all your doors and making sure that did I turn off the stove, right? All of a sudden you are like not so relaxed on that couch after watching that horror movie. And you may even be jumpy for a little longer in that night. That's because your brain that's why the horror movie works. It does not recognize that it's a TV. I mean, realistically, logically, your butt is on the couch in your living room.
Yep.
Right? But yet you have a full stress response.
Yeah,
And
that's very true because that happened to me last night. I was up by myself and I was watching this ghost hunter-y kind of show.
Mhm.
And at one point I'm like, okay, it's time to turn that off and put something light on because I was finding myself getting stressed and like, looking over my shoulders. And I'm like, okay, that, this is whatever, but this is not happening in your house. This is just right there, right? And
but your brain by itself doesn't know that.
but that's right. So it was like I was like, okay, I don't want to feel this way, so I'm gonna watch some.
I personally don't watch horror movies because I don't want that response.
Yeah.
And for a very long time in college, I was watching all the NCIS, Law and Order, and all of those, and then I stopped because yet again, you are priming yourself to react. That becomes your world, right?
Yes.
As a college student, I would put something, in a background as I was working, and it very often would be Law and Order or NCIS or Bonds or one of the criminal shows. The most twisty one I ever watched was The Criminal Minds. That one really that one was, and I really watched it because it was well psychologically written.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to watch the plot develop. But yeah, all of a sudden you're seeing serial killers every, and your relationship with people are changing, and you're starting to behave like you are a police officer. It's an interesting, it is an interesting, actually, I have a lot of friends who are on the force, and they have so many habits. For example, with how they say hi to you, how they position their body, because they always looking, they don't have a margin to make a mistake.
Yeah.
Right. So how they approach a car, always from an angle, there is a reason for that. And even on their time off, they do that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the same, if you watch, the saying that you become the 5 people that you spend most time with, and the books that you read and the TV shows that you watch, it becomes ingrained in your nervous system. So we talk a ton about diets and clean eating, and more and more about no pesticides and organic food and all of that, but we seldom talk about what are you feeding your mind.
Yes.
What's your mind diet?
Yeah.
What are you consuming on daily basis? Are you on Facebook? Are you, what is in that diet? Is it junk? Are you in McDonald's every day and Burger King in your mind? Or are you exposing yourself to that? Or are you eating quality content?
Mm-hmm.
Who you spend time with? So that's the pillar, the befriend your surroundings. That's what I teach, of what serves you in your surroundings.
Yeah. And I agree with that, because I have just found that, you end up in some situations with people and you can see, right? Oh, I'm with all these people that, yeah, they don't really care. And they're going down that road, and you're going with them. Even if you're kind of a little hesitant, you're like, oh, it's okay, right? My friends are doing it. It's all right if I follow along. And so, yeah, I have a few things that myself, but I think that's a really important message to get out to people, is that it is important what you're eating, what you're reading, what you're looking on your social media content, right? So, and like, are you spending all day, or are you like, oh, I'm going to browse it for, 5 minutes and then call it a day?
There is no such a thing as 5 minutes browsing. It's designed. So I always say that if it wasn't for my business, I would not be on social media. That's how we've met, right? On connected
Right.
over social media. I spent way too much time on social media than I would like. And I personally moved all of my groups and my clients off of Facebook or other social medias, because I don't want them to have to log in.
Okay.
It's designed, it's literally behaviorally designed to sink and drag you down. So there is no such a thing as, and you can only have the strong will, strong control for so long. And sooner or later, you're going to go down that rabbit hole, because it's very well actually designed by psychologists. They have whole teams of scientists designing this to be as addictive as possibly, as much as possibly, because the more time you spend on it, the more they're making.
And it's so true, because you watch people and I don't know, I watch people on their phones and that, and I think, my God, you're wasting your life away. There's so much you could be doing, and they can't sit and eat without them. They can't sit and watch TV without them both having it.
It's a full addiction, and it hits the same circles as heavy drug addiction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I personally, for example, excuse me for a second. I have all of notifications on my phones turns off. If you want to catch me, you have to text me. I don't pick up the phone. I don't have my ringer on, because otherwise it's a constant stimulus to get your attention. And the moment you pick this little device up, your fingers automatically want to go to what dopamine circle trains you to go to. But going back to that stress response, realizing that, and the burnout, realizing that the appraisal is what makes something stressful or not. What's fun for me may be a total stress for you, and what can be total stress for you may be fun for me, right?
Yep.
So realizing that stress starts with your response, with your appraisal. So is it a tiger, or am I watching a TV? Right? Is it real or is it not? And then how am I reacting to it? And can I stop that? Do I have to go into, do I need to get higher in my nervous system response, into that sympathetic nervous system response? Or can I implement some tools like breathing exercises to calm myself down because I'm watching a movie on the couch and the ghosts are not going to come out of my walls to eat me tonight? Right? So maybe tomorrow, but not tonight.
Right.
And no, and it's so realistically, I can self-regulate. I literally just did this with a client on Monday, I think, where he has a stressor in his life. And so I use this PMF Beamer mat that it's very nice to regulate nervous system. And you can have it in your house. But I use it during the sessions with him. And so I get him in a very nice, calm, parasympathetic state. A lot of my clients have to learn what calm and parasympathetic is because they haven't been in that state for so long that they don't even remember what that feels like. So we get you there. I use this little shortcut with Beamer, which helps me with it. And then while you're in this relaxed state, I'm going to say, for example, well, imagine this thing that drives you absolutely nuts. Actually, so we're doing that a little reconditioning, that this stimuli doesn't have to be, and it's funny because at the beginning you can literally see their fans tense up and they're having that response. But if we do that about 10 times, all of a sudden they're like, oh wait, yeah. It's just pure, exposure therapy in your head. Think about that person that drives you nuts. Think about that person that drives you up. Things, and for the sudden you're like, okay, this is boring. And your nervous system also gets to the point where it says, okay, this is boring. I don't have to respond to that anymore.
Yeah.
For watching horror movies, you can train yourself. Sitting on the couch and doing fun breathing exercises and relaxing and having that ability to be flexible with it. Having the ability to say, I'm reacting, but I have control over it, how far it goes.
Mm-hmm.
I have tools to calm myself down. Because not everything is worth your adrenaline.
No, but I mean, it helps, and it helps to know these little tricks about breathing and, kind of looking at all these different areas to help us get through the day when we're stressed out or feeling burnt out or, because a lot of times I will do that if I'm kind of feeling burnt out from the day. I'll just go outside and stand, well, as long as it's sunny, but like go outside and stand in the sunshine for a second and just like, okay, now I feel much better. Like just take some deep breaths and then I can go back in. Not that I'm maybe is not stressed, but not as much. And then you can get through the day.
Exactly.
I can.
Yeah, you're taking that reaction down, and it's the old-fashioned. The other thing is sleep. We underestimate how much sleep we need, and sleep is amazing both for physiology and mental state. You really should take a close look at your sleeping habits. It's fascinating what our body does in sleep and how much detox goes on both in your mind and in your body during sleep. But it's that ability to step back and say, okay, I say this, and some of my clients are MDs, but let's just say that majority of my clients and majority of my population are not emergency room MDs, right? So we live, and I think part of that internet and that fast response emails and pings and constant, answering. We live in a world when all of a sudden everything has to be now.
Mm-hmm.
And then we put that pressure on ourselves. And I remember when I was growing up, stationary, the cell phones came out when I was in college, and laptops came out when I was graduating high school. Right? So So an internet was just starting, the dial-up America Online. Remember that one?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember doing research, going to library, and you had to know, like, I teach college. I used to teach college. I stopped 2 years ago, but I explained to students why we write format the way we write. Because you had to know if it's a book or if it's a journal. And why did you have to know? Well, because they were in a totally different parts of library and they use different catalogs, right? So by looking at the reference, you had to know which catalog to go to find it. Now you put it in PubMed. I'm doing research on PTSD and scientific research for Beamer and PTSD. And I did all my preliminary research while sitting on my couch in my house, in the evening, plugging it into PubMed and AI searching for me for keywords that I want to find. And it gives me a list of articles, and I don't have to leave my living room. But when I'm going with it, everything is fast.
Yeah.
So we have that feeling that, oh my God, if I don't respond, the world will end. Same for clients, clients want it now. Now, this moment.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I always say, unless you are an emergency room physician, unless someone is profoundly bleeding on the floor or losing airways, they don't probably need it now.
That's
unless
right.
you're working in medical field that that it is true, or a firefighter or a police, when it's a life and death situation. It's only in our heads that it's a now.
Yeah.
And that comes with setting those boundaries and time management. But that's part of befriend your boundaries, of being okay with saying, okay, so I will lose a client, but that client is killing me. If it's a client that that demands constant attention, and is it worth to you?
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, you have to think about that. You really do, because it's important for you to be sane first.
That's right. And I know for myself, like, I have some pretty strong boundaries when it comes to stuff like that. Like, for the most part, my ringer's not on my phone, and you can text me, and when I have a chance, I will respond to you. But I don't feel that pull to be like, oh, I need to be on my phone right now responding to everybody. I also turn off the notifications, those kind of things, because I need to focus on the things that I need to focus on too. And I have no problem just saying, I'm sorry. Like, it's not that I don't want to spend time with you or I don't want to respond to you, but I don't right at this moment because I'm involved in something else. Like, if I'm having family dinner or something, I'm not going to be on my phone, because that's, to me, I feel like that's saying to everybody at my family dinner, you're not really that important to me, because I'd rather find out who's on the phone than share my time with you.
We have the same rule in my household that when we have, and I try to have at least probably on average we do 3-4 sit-down family dinners with my kids and my husband every night. Trying as much, gymnastics and other things happen sometimes in the afternoon, so so not every night, but most of the nights we try to have a sit-down dinner, and the rule is no phones by the table.
That's true. That's a good idea.
This is time for conversations. This is time to check in with each other. We have a family meeting afterwards, kind of why we choose to decide to see what needs to be done, what's, where we are. And this is to be connected and not be, and then the other thing is when we go camping into the woods with a trailer. We like state parks, so primitive camping, although we do have a trailer that I don't call it camper, it's a glamper. It has even without electricity, I have a generator. So, but I used to camp under the sky. So this is a queen bed and a shower and a microwave and an AC, and that's a glamping. That's not camping. But we have a rule for everyone: no electronics, unless it's a Kindle. I break that, but I have a Paperwhite. And interestingly, I love it because my phone has no coverage where we go. My husband's phone has a good coverage. Mine has only 2 spots in a whole big campground. It's a state forest. I literally have to go to the store and stand by the store to download anything. However, if I'm hiking with a dog, it will, if you have to call 911, it will catch any, so it has a connection as a safety.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
It is perfect.
And it's kind
It
of
is.
interesting because we come back after, usually like right now in July, we're going for 10 days, and we come back from that, and all of a sudden your mailbox has like thousands of spam because you haven't cleaned it in 10 days, and
Yeah.
and you just sit there for an hour and it's like click, click,
Delete,
trash,
delete.
trash,
Yeah.
trash,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and you notice how much you do that for the day. But to your defense with the not answering, you actually saving time that way. Scientifically proven, but that by multitasking, you're losing about 30% of productivity and time. And you make a lot of more mistakes. I'm totally guilty of it. I always think that I can cook and do something else, and then I'll end up having to either scrap a pot, buy a new one, and definitively, overboiling something and having to clean the stove. Because I thought that I can do
Do two
something
things.
else. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can do two things at a time. And now I understand why my grandma would like do one pot at a time, and watched it, and maybe sit and read a newspaper next to it, but watched it. That was the
Yeah.
main my points. And she never had to clean the stove.
Right.
It's like, and I'm like, oh, I can be faster now, because then you do an extra layer of work.
That's right. Then you're frustrated too.
You just add, you not only weren't faster, and sometimes you ruin whatever you were cooking, but on top of that, you now have extra cleaning to do.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
So yes, another task added to it. So that's my big hint, is to really, again, life sometimes is what it is, but I always say pick your battles with your children, with your spouses, and with your house. And for example, my house is not perfectly organized. I have two small kids. I will clean, and about 2 hours later, it looks like I've never did. It drives my parents nuts when they come over, and I'm like, I'm over it.
Yeah, you have to be
When they
over it.
move out, it's gonna be, a different situation. But the house is clean organically. I have cleaning lady who comes every 2 weeks and make sure it's deep cleaned. I clean organically, vacuum every other day or every day, because I have dogs and cats. Most days I do vacuum, especially in the spring. It's clean, but it's cluttered, and I stopped fighting it, because if I wasn't, I would literally be doing nothing else but cleaning all my
And that's not fun.
Thank you.
No.
And I have better things to do. For example, right now, be on a Zoom with you right now.
Right.
And not picking
Exactly.
up and declaring stuff. So priorities, like, it goes back to that, what is truly important to you,
Yeah.
and to you, not to
Everybody else
whoever
around.
you're trying to
That's right.
please.
Exactly. Well, this hour has just flown by. So if you had a final thought to share with our followers, what would it be?
To remember that you don't have to do it alone, and that there is help there, and it may be me or maybe someone else, but to reach out if you need help, and don't struggle. There is a ton of free stuff. There are paid stuff. Obviously I have paid groups. I also have one-on-one work, depending who needs what. I also coach. I'm launching my coaching certification, so I teach other coaches how to do what I do from a very scientific point of view, and really learning deeply about psychology and psychology of change and all of that. So it's not an easy certification. It's not a 5-day certification. But my biggest thing is the message is that you don't have to do it alone. And remember to love. And remember to love yourself first, because you cannot love others unless you love yourself.
That is so true. Very good. Very good.
So, yeah.
So very true.
It really is. And so can you tell everybody where they can find you?
The fastest way to find me is on Facebook. And if you type in my name, Karolina LaBrecque, you will probably find me. There's going to be Przewłoka in between. It starts with P. You don't want to know how to spell that. You can also find me on helptogrowinstitute.com. So the website is helptogrowinstitute.com, and my Instagram handle is helptogrow. It's pretty simple. LinkedIn, the same, my name with my maiden name, Karolina LaBrecque. I'm all on all of those platforms.
Okay.
I respond pretty well on Facebook and Instagram if someone contacts me. You're probably going to hear from me within those parameters of not being on social media posts that, yes, we talked about, but within hours, you will get a response. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well,
Through the webpage, through the website, there is a connection that you can fill up a form and it will.
okay. Well, we'll put those in our show notes. And your book, where is your book available on Amazon? And
so my my old book is available on Amazon, but that's totally not on this not on this topics, because I did publish a book 9 years ago on healing horses, which was extension of my PhD. But the book that's getting ready, I actually have my cover just got done this week. That will come up on in the fall. I hope that to be out depending on the editor's timeline, but it will be done. It will be written by the end of this month, which next week, and it will be, I hope to have it published in the fall. And yes, it will be on Amazon, and it will be, you know, on my social media's connection as well, obviously. So yes.
okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been such a pleasure, and you know,
Feeling very so much knowledge. Hey, a lot of knowledge in this one. That's beautiful.
Well, it was fun, and thank you so much for having me over. Hope we can do it some other time if you want to as well.
That would be wonderful. That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
So thank you. And everybody else, tune in next time.
Please do.